My truck died at 11:26 p.m., 60 miles north of Fairbanks, on a stretch of highway that doesn't show up properly on most maps. The engine didn't fail all at once. It started with a quiet hesitation, like it was thinking about stopping. Then a long shudder, and then nothing. No warning lights, no smoke, just silence, like something had decided I wasn't going any further. I sat there for a full minute, with my hands still on the wheel, staring out at the road ahead. Dark. Not regular night dark. Not the kind you get in cities or even small towns. This was the kind of dark that feels occupied. The kind that presses back when you look at it too long. The cold started settling in almost immediately. Alaska doesn't wait. I tried my phone. No signal. Not even a flicker. I checked again anyway, turning it slightly, like that might change something. It didn't. The heater died with the engine. Within minutes, my breath was visible in the cab. I had half a tank of gas, a dead truck, and no one coming. Then I saw the light. At first I thought it was just reflection, maybe ice on the windshield, catching something distant. But it stayed steady. A faint yellow glow, low to the ground, maybe half a mile ahead. I watched it for a while before moving. Out here, you don't rush toward things you don't understand. But staying in the truck wasn't an option. So I grabbed my bag, stepped out into the cold, and started walking. The snow didn't crunch the way it should have. It gave under my boots too quietly, like I was stepping on something softer than it had any right to be. The air smelled clean, but underneath that was something metallic. Faint, but there. The light got clearer as I got closer. A building. Low, wide, squat against the wind, like it had learned how to survive by not standing out. A gas station. Or something that had been one. The sign above it flickered weakly. No brand name. Just a panel of dim yellow bulbs that didn't spell anything anymore. Half of them were burned out. The rest hummed faintly. The pumps out front were old. Not just old, wrong. The kind you'd expect in photos from the 70s. Analog displays, thick hoses, frost crawling up the metal like veins. No cars, no tracks. Just the station, sitting there like it had been waiting. There was a single light on inside. I stopped about 20 feet from the door. Something about the place felt deliberate. Not abandoned, not run down, maintained. Like someone was still taking care of it. I don't know how long I stood there before the door opened. It didn't creak, didn't stick. It just opened cleanly, like it had been used recently. A man stepped out. Late 50s, maybe early 60s. Heavy coat, thick gloves, hat pulled low. His face was lined in a way that didn't come from age alone. He looked at me like he'd already been expecting me. "You're late," he said. I glanced behind me, half expecting to see someone else on the road. "There's no one else," he added, like he'd read the thought. "My truck." "I know," he said. "Happens." He stepped aside and held the door open. The heat hit me first. Not just warmth. Real heat. The kind that settles into your bones and makes you realize how cold you actually were. I hesitated. He noticed. "You can stay out there if you want," he said. "But it's only going to get colder." That decided it. I went inside. The place was bigger than it looked from outside. Not by much, but enough to feel off. Shelves stocked with things that didn't match. Old packaging, brands I hadn't seen in years, some I didn't recognize at all. A counter ran along the right side. Behind it, a wall of keys. Dozens of them, maybe more. There was a coffee machine near the back, already on. No music, no radio, just a low electrical hum and the faint sound of wind pressing against the building. "Sit," the man said, nodding toward a stool by the counter. I did. He poured coffee without asking and set it in front of me. It was hot. Not fresh hot, not recently brewed, just hot. Like it had always been that temperature. I wrapped my hands around the cup. The warmth felt immediate, deep. "You planning to keep going tonight?" he asked. My truck's dead. He nodded once, like that confirmed something. You can work, he said. I looked up. What? Night shift, he continued. Midnight to 6. Cash. You make it to morning, I'll call someone to take a look at your truck. That was too fast. You don't even know me. I know enough. Something in his tone made it clear that was the end of that part of the conversation. I glanced around again. Still no one else. What exactly would I be doing? Same as anywhere, he said. Stock. Clean. Serve anyone who comes in. Anyone? I asked. He held my gaze for a second longer than necessary. Anyone, he repeated. Then he reached under the counter and pulled out a folded piece of paper. Not laminated, not printed, handwritten. He slid it across to me. Rules, he said. I didn't touch it right away. You'll want to read those before midnight, he added. I picked it up. The handwriting was neat, careful, like whoever wrote it understood that getting it wrong wasn't an option. There were 12 items, numbered, no explanations, just instructions. I read the first one, then the second. By the third, I felt something shift, not in the room, but in the way I was understanding it. These aren't, I started. No, he said, they're not suggestions. I kept reading. Rules about customers who don't leave footprints. Rules about the freezer door. Rules about a radio that wasn't plugged in. Rules about not stepping outside between certain hours, no matter what you hear. The last one was underlined. Do not, under any circumstances, answer the pump if it activates on its own. I looked up. This is a joke, right? The man didn't smile. Midnight, he said, tapping the paper once. That's when it starts. I checked my watch. 11:58. He stepped back, already pulling on his gloves. You're leaving? I did my shift, he replied. He walked to the door, then paused with his hand on the handle. One more thing, he said without turning around. If something knocks, count to 10 before you decide it's real. Then he stepped outside and closed the door behind him. I watched through the glass as he walked into the dark. 10 steps, 15, then the snow shifted, just slightly, and he was gone. Not out of sight. Gone. I stood there for a long moment, the papers still in my hand. Then somewhere behind me, something clicked. A soft mechanical sound. I turned slowly. The pump outside, closest to the building, had activated. No car, no movement, just the handle slightly lifted, and the numbers on the display beginning to climb. 11:59, 12 o'clock. The shift had started, and I was already on Rule 12. I didn't move right away. The numbers on the pump ticked upward in steady mechanical increments, slow enough to watch, fast enough to feel intentional. 0.01, 0.02, 0.03. No sound of fuel moving. No presence. Just the quiet certainty that something had started. I looked down at the paper in my hand, scanning for Rule 12 again, even though I already knew what it said. Do not, under any circumstances, answer the pump if it activates on its own. The wording mattered. Not don't go outside, not ignore it. Answer. That implied interaction, transaction, acknowledgement. I set the paper on the counter carefully, like sudden movements might count as participation, and stepped back. The pump kept running. The numbers passed 1 gallon, then 2. The cold pressed faintly against the windows, like something leaning in from the outside. I forced myself to turn away. Rule 1 was easier to follow when you weren't looking at the thing, trying to break it. I moved behind the counter, more out of instinct than decision. If this was a job, then there were things to do. Tasks made things manageable. That was something I understood. I checked the shelves first. Canned goods, snacks, things in faded packaging with designs that hadn't been used in decades. Nothing expired, nothing dusty. Every item faced forward, aligned perfectly. Maintained. The same word came back to me. Not abandoned, not forgotten. Maintained. I opened the register. Cash inside. Old bills mixed with newer ones. No system I could recognize. I closed it. Behind me, the pump clicked once. The numbers stopped. I didn't turn around. I waited. 5 seconds. 10. Nothing. When I finally looked, the display had reset to 0. The handle had settled back into place. The lot was empty. I exhaled slowly, not realizing I'd been holding my breath. One rule down, or maybe I'd just gotten lucky. I picked the paper back up. 12 rules. I needed to know them before something else decided to test me. Rule 1. Greet every customer, even if you don't see them enter. Rule 2. If a customer doesn't cast a reflection in the glass, do not make eye contact. Serve them quickly. Rule 3. The radio behind the counter will turn on at random. Do not change the station. Do not unplug it. Rule 4. If the freezer door is open, close it immediately. Do not look inside for longer than necessary. Rule 5. Customers who leave no footprints must be served last. Rule 6. If you hear knocking, count to 10 before responding. Rule 7. Do not leave the building between 1 a.m. and 3 o'clock a.m. Rule 8. If a customer asks how far it is to Anchorage, tell them, not far. Rule 9. If the lights flicker 3 times, stop what you're doing and stand still. Rule 10. Do not accept coins older than 1965. Rule 11. If you see someone standing at pump 3 for more than 2 minutes, turn off the interior lights. Rule 12. Do not, under any circumstances, answer the pump if it activates on its own. I read them twice, then a third time. Patterns. There were patterns. Time windows. Specific behaviors. Conditional responses. This wasn't random. It was a system. Something moved in the reflection of the front glass. I looked up automatically, and immediately wished I hadn't. There was someone standing just outside the door. I hadn't heard it open, hadn't heard footsteps. They were just there. A man, maybe. Hard to tell. Heavy coat, hood up, face partially obscured. Snow around him, but no tracks. Rule 5. Customers who leave no footprints must be served last. My eyes dropped instantly to the floor in front of the door. Nothing. No marks in the snow leading up to where he stood. Just smooth, untouched white. He didn't move, didn't knock, just stood there, waiting. I forced myself to look away from his face and focus on the door handle. It turned slowly. The door opened. Cold air slipped in around him as he stepped inside. Still no sound of footsteps. "Welcome," I said, my voice steady despite the pressure building behind it. "What can I get you tonight?" Rule 1. Always greet them. He didn't respond right away. Just stood there. Then slowly he lifted his head. I kept my gaze just below his eyes. Not direct eye contact. Not a reflection check either. Somewhere in between. Safe. "I need fuel," he said. His voice sounded wrong. Not distorted. Just slightly out of sync. Like the words had been recorded and played back through something that didn't quite understand them. "I can't help you with the pumps right now," I said. That felt like the safest interpretation of Rule 12. A pause. Then, "You already are." My grip tightened slightly on the counter. "I can ring you up inside," I said, "if you'd like." Another pause. Then he stepped forward. The glass behind him caught the movement. No reflection. Rule 2. Do not make eye contact. He approached the counter. Movement smooth, but not natural. Like something approximating the way a person walks, rather than actually doing it. "I was here before," he said. I said nothing. I left something. My mind ran through the rules again. Nothing about lost items. Nothing about returning customers. "I can check," I said carefully. "What did you leave?" He tilted his head slightly. The motion was too precise. Time, he said. I didn't respond. There wasn't a correct response to that. I'd like it back, he added. I reached for the register. Action over reaction. I can offer you coffee, I said. It wasn't in the rules, but it was something. A transaction. A boundary. He was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded once. I poured the coffee and set it on the counter. He didn't touch it. Just stood there, staring at it. Waiting. For what? I didn't know. Seconds passed. Then, without warning, the lights flickered. Once, twice, 3 times. Rule 9. I froze, completely still. The man didn't move. The coffee didn't steam. Even the sound of the wind seemed to pause. Everything held in place. Then the lights stabilized. I stayed still for another second, just in case. When I finally moved again, the man was gone. No sound, no door, just empty space where he had been. The coffee cup remained, still full, still hot. Behind me, the radio clicked on. A low hiss filled the room, followed by a voice too faint to make out. Rule 3. Do not change the station. Do not unplug it. I turned slowly toward it, keeping my distance. The voice sharpened slightly. Still open, still serving, still there. I looked back at the door. The snow outside was smooth again, untouched, like nothing had ever been there. I picked up the paper once more, scanning the rules again, slower this time. Not just reading, understanding. Each one wasn't just a warning, it was a boundary. And every time something crossed it, I had to respond exactly right. No hesitation, no interpretation, just compliance. Because whatever this place was, it wasn't testing whether I understood. It was testing whether I'd follow instructions. The radio crackled again. Next arrival. The lights dimmed slightly, then steadied. I checked my watch. 12:17 a.m., 17 minutes into the shift, and already 3 rules had come into play. This wasn't going to slow down. It was going to escalate. I moved back behind the counter and checked the coffee machine again, more for something to do than because it needed it. Still hot, always hot, like it had never cooled. The door creaked slightly, not opening, just shifting in its frame as the wind pressed against it. I watched it, waited. Nothing. Then, a soft knock. 3 taps, evenly spaced, but deliberate. I felt my chest tighten slightly. Rule 6. Count to 10 before responding. I stared at the door. 1, 2, 3. The knock didn't repeat. 4, 5. The radio hissed quietly behind me. 6, 7. The cold pressed harder against the glass. 8, 9. A voice came through the door. Please, it said. Soft, human. I know you're in there. I closed my eyes briefly. 10. I opened them and didn't move. I stayed where I was. The voice didn't come again immediately, and that was the first thing that felt wrong about it. Real people repeat themselves. They get louder, more urgent, more uneven. This voice had said what it needed to say. Now it was waiting. The door didn't move. No shadow crossed the glass. No shape formed outside. Just the suggestion of presence, held in place by expectation. I looked down at the rules again, even though I didn't need to. Count to 10 before responding. Not open the door. Not let them in. Just respond. And I had, by not moving, by not breaking the boundary. That counted. It had to. A full minute passed, then 2. The pressure at the door eased, not physically, but in the way a thought fades when you stop feeding it. I exhaled slowly and stepped back from the counter. The radio crackled again. Good. The word came through clearer than anything before it. Not louder, just closer. I didn't look at it, didn't acknowledge it. Acknowledgement felt like participation, and I was starting to understand. that participation was where things went wrong. I turned instead to the shelves behind the counter and started organizing them, aligning items that were already aligned. It gave my hands something to do, kept my focus anchored, because the alternative was standing still and waiting for the next rule to trigger, and that felt worse. At 12:31, the freezer door opened. No sound, just a shift in the air, a subtle change in pressure, like the building had taken a breath and forgotten to let it out. I saw it in my peripheral vision first, the faint line of darkness where the seal had broken. Rule 4. If the freezer door is open, close it immediately. Do not look inside for longer than necessary. I moved before I could think about it. Fast, but controlled. The kind of movement that doesn't invite attention. The freezer was at the back, set into the wall beside the coffee machine. Old metal handle, frost crawling along the edges. The door stood open about 6 inches. Cold spilled out, not the sharp, clean cold of refrigeration, but something heavier, damp. I reached for the handle and stopped because there was a sound coming from inside. Not loud, not clear, but present, like something shifting slowly against itself. I tightened my grip and pulled the door shut, hard. The seal caught with a dull thud. The sound stopped immediately. I kept my hand on the handle for a second longer than necessary, then let go. I didn't look, not inside, not at the edges, not at anything that might suggest what had been there. Rule followed. That was enough. I stepped back. The air in the room settled again. Behind me, the radio whispered. Too slow. I ignored it, because that wasn't a rule, and if it wasn't a rule, it didn't get my attention. I checked my watch. 12:34. 3 minutes, that was all that had passed. It felt longer. The door opened again. This time, I heard it. A clean mechanical click, followed by the soft push of air as it swung inward. I turned. A woman stepped inside. Heavy coat, fur-lined hood, gloves. Snow clung to her shoulders. And this time, footprints, clear, defined, leading from the door to where she stood. Rule 5 didn't apply. That made it easier. Welcome, I said. She nodded once, pulling her gloves off slowly. You're open late, she said. Her voice sounded normal. That alone made me more cautious. 24 hours, I replied. She glanced around the store, eyes moving quickly, but not nervously, taking inventory. Good, she said. I've been driving a while. There was something in the way she said it. Not tired, not relieved, just factual. How far to Anchorage? She asked. Rule 8, no hesitation. Not far, I said. She studied me for a second, then nodded again, like I'd given the correct answer on a test I didn't know I was taking. I'll take coffee, she said, and whatever's hot. I poured the coffee, same as before, steam rising in slow, steady curls, always the same temperature. I handed it to her. She took it, drank immediately. No hesitation, no testing. That was new. What's good? She asked, nodding toward the shelves. Everything's fresh, I said. Technically true. She smiled slightly at that, like she understood something I didn't. I'll take jerky, she said. And one of those. She pointed to a wrapped sandwich near the warmer. I grabbed both and rang them up. She paid in cash. Bills. No coins. I noticed that automatically now. Rule 10. She took her change without counting it. Another small detail that felt off, in a way I couldn't define. You working alone? She asked. I nodded. For now. She looked toward the back of the store, toward the freezer. Her expression didn't change, but her attention lingered there half a second too long. Don't fall behind, she said. Then she picked up her coffee and walked out. I watched her go. The door closed behind her. Her footprints remained, leading out into the snow. I waited. 5 seconds. 10. The wind shifted. The tracks blurred slightly, then disappeared. Not covered, not filled, just gone. I looked back at the counter. The register was still open. I closed it. Behind me, the radio spoke again. Better. I didn't respond. I wasn't here to interpret feedback. I was here to follow rules. That distinction was becoming clearer with every minute. At 12:52, the lights flickered once, then steadied. No rule triggered. Not yet. I stayed alert anyway, because the patterns weren't random. They were building, layering, each event closer to the next, each rule coming faster, and somewhere in the middle of that, there was something else. Something watching to see what I'd do when the rules weren't enough. The pump outside clicked again. Soft, mechanical, deliberate. I didn't turn to look. I didn't need to. I already knew which one it was. The closest to the building, the same as before. The numbers would be climbing. The handle slightly lifted, waiting. But I wasn't going to make the same mistake twice. I didn't need to see it to know it was happening. I just needed to not answer it. I stepped back from the counter and focused on the shelves again. Alignment, order, control. Because outside, something was trying to create the opposite. And the only way through this shift was to not let it. The second time the pump activated, it ran longer. I tracked it without looking. Not by sound, there wasn't any, but by the way the air in the room shifted. The same subtle pressure I'd felt before, like something leaning closer, waiting for acknowledgement. It lasted at least 2 minutes, maybe more. Long enough to become a question. Long enough to make ignoring it feel like a decision instead of a reaction. That was the difference this time. The first activation had been a surprise. This one was a test. I stayed behind the counter, hands flat against the surface, eyes fixed on the register. Not moving, not reacting. Because reacting was where mistakes happened. The pump stopped. The pressure eased. No escalation, no consequence, at least none I could see. I checked my watch. 1:03 a.m. That mattered. Rule 7. Do not leave the building between 1 a.m. and 8 p.m. And 3 a.m. The timing wasn't random. Nothing here was. Whatever happened next would happen inside. The door rattled suddenly, sharp and violent, like someone had hit it with their shoulder. I flinched despite myself. The handle jerked once, twice, then went still. No knock, no voice. Just impact. Didn't approach, didn't acknowledge, because there was no rule telling me to. And I was starting to understand that doing anything beyond the rules was the real danger. The door settled back into place. Silence followed. Then, footsteps. Outside. Heavy, fast, circling the building. I could hear them through the walls, muted, but clear enough to track. Front, side, back. They didn't crunch in the snow. They thudded, dull, like weight without texture. I stood completely still, listening. The pattern wasn't random. It was pacing, like something mapping the structure, learning it. The radio hissed louder. Don't. The word stretched, distorted slightly like interference was pulling at it. Look. I wasn't planning to. The footsteps stopped at the back of the building, right where the freezer was. The handle behind me rattled. Not the door, the freezer. A sharp metallic shake, then another. I didn't turn around. Rule 4 had already been triggered once. It didn't say anything about repeated attempts. Intentional. Like the rules didn't cover everything on purpose. The handle rattled again. Harder this time. Then, a long, slow scrape. From the inside. Something dragging across metal. I closed my eyes for half a second, then opened them. Still facing forward. Still not turning. because looking wasn't required. And if it wasn't required, it wasn't safe. The sound stopped. The air shifted again. Not pressure this time. Absence. Like whatever had been there had pulled back. I checked my watch again. 1:19. 16 minutes had passed. It felt like hours. The lights flickered once, twice, then held. Not 3 times. Not a rule, but close enough to make my muscles tense anyway. I forced myself to relax. Slow, controlled, deliberate. Because panic wasn't part of the system, and anything outside the system felt like a mistake waiting to happen. A shadow moved across the front windows. I saw it in the reflection of the register. Not outside, inside. I turned slowly. There was someone standing at pump 3. Inside. Not physically inside the building, but visible through the glass in a way that didn't match the space. Like the reflection was showing something that wasn't there. A figure. Tall. Still. Facing the pump. Not moving. Rule 11. If you see someone standing at pump 3 for more than 2 minutes, turn off the interior lights. I didn't know how long it had been there. That mattered. I watched. 30 seconds. A minute. The figure didn't move, didn't shift, didn't acknowledge anything. Just stood there. At exactly 2 minutes, I reached for the switch. No hesitation. No second guessing. I flipped it. The lights went out. Instant. Complete. The only illumination came from outside, the dim yellow bulbs of the sign, and the faint glow of the snow reflecting what little light existed. The inside of the station dropped into shadow. Not darkness. Not fully. But enough that the edges of things softened. Lost definition. I kept my eyes on the window. The figure at pump 3 was gone. No transition, no movement, just absence. I waited. 5 seconds. 10. Nothing returned. I turned the lights back on. They came up slower this time. Not flickering, just delayed. Like something had to allow it. I didn't question it. I didn't analyze it. I just accepted it. Because that was the pattern. Observe. Follow. Move on. The radio crackled again. Correct. That word again. Clearer than it should have been. Closer than the speaker. I glanced at it despite myself. The display was dark. No power. No connection. Still speaking. I looked away. Immediately. And the moment I started engaging with things outside the rules, I'd lose the structure. And without structure, this place didn't make sense. At 1:37, the knocking came back. Different this time. Faster. Irregular. Panicked. I froze. Rule 6. Count to 10. The knocks overlapped slightly, like whoever, or whatever, was outside, had lost track of rhythm. 1, a voice said, cutting through the sound. Male. Strained. Please just... I didn't move. 2, 3, the handle shook violently. 4, 5, there's something out here. 6, 7, a loud udar against the door, like a body hitting it. 8, 9, open the... 10, silence. Instant. Total. The kind of silence that feels placed, not natural. I stayed still for another second, then 2. Then I stepped back from the door, because the rule had been followed, and whatever came next would come next anyway. The lights flickered 3 times. I stopped moving, completely. The radio cut to static. The freezer hummed faintly, and somewhere, very close, something exhaled. Not outside, not behind me. Inside the room. I didn't turn, didn't react, didn't acknowledge, because there wasn't a rule telling me to. And that was the only thing keeping this from becoming something else. The exhale came again, slow, measured, like something adjusting to the space, learning it. The lights steadied. The sound stopped. I waited. Then carefully, I moved again. Back behind the counter. Back to the coffee. Back to the only normal thing in the building. Because normal, even artificial normal, was the only advantage I had left. By 2 o'clock in the morning, the station had settled into something that felt almost stable. Not safe, not predictable, but structured. The rules had created a rhythm, and as long as I stayed inside it, things held together. That was the only way to describe it. Held together. Like the building itself depended on those instructions being followed in the exact order they were needed. I stopped thinking of them as rules. They were procedures, and I was part of them now. At 2:07, the radio changed. Not abruptly, not with a click or static burst. The sound just shifted. The low hiss tightened into something more focused, more intentional. A voice came through. Clear, male, calm. "You're doing well," it said. I didn't respond. Not because I didn't want to, but because there was no rule telling me I could. "You've made it further than most," it continued. That word again. Most. I kept my eyes on the counter. Hands steady, breathing controlled. The voice didn't belong to the man who had left. It didn't belong to anyone I'd seen. Sound like it was coming through the radio. It sounded like it was being placed into it. "You understand the system," it said. "That's important." The lights dimmed slightly. Then steadied. Still no rule triggered. Still no permission to engage. "I can help you," the voice said. That was new. An offer. Not an instruction. Not a warning. An option. I stayed silent. "You won't make it to morning without help," it added. That was probably true. But truth didn't matter here. Only rules. The radio crackled softly. Then the voice lowered, just slightly. "Check the freezer." I felt something tighten in my chest. That was specific, targeted, and not part of the list. I didn't move. "Now," the voice said. Still calm, still controlled, but different, less patient. That confirmed it. This wasn't part of the system. This was something trying to insert itself into it. I picked up the paper again, scanning the rules. Nothing about voices. Nothing about instructions beyond the list. Which meant, ignore it. The radio hissed sharply, then went quiet. Completely. No background noise. No presence. Just absence. That felt worse. At 2:19 the door opened again. Slow. Measured. A man stepped inside. Older. Late 60s, maybe 70s. Heavy coat. Worn boots. Gloves tucked into his pocket. Snow clung to his shoulders. Footprints followed him in. Mattered. "Evening," I said. He nodded. Moved slower than the others. More deliberate. Like each step had weight behind it. "Coffee," he said. His voice was steady. Tired. But real. I poured it. Set it in front of him. He wrapped his hands around the cup and held it there for a moment before drinking. The same way I had. The same way anyone cold would. That grounded something. Made it feel normal. "How far to Anchorage?" he asked. "Not far," I replied. He nodded. Took a slow sip. Exhaled. "Good," he said. Then he looked at me. Directly. Not testing, not searching, just looking. "You're new," he said. I didn't answer. Didn't need to. "You're following them," he added. A statement, not a question. I gave a slight nod. "That helps," he said. Another sip of coffee. Then he set the cup down carefully. "You hear anything?" he asked. I hesitated. That was a question, not a rule, but it didn't feel like a trap. Still, I kept it simple. "The radio," I said. He nodded again. "Don't listen," he said. "I'm not." "Good." He glanced toward the freezer, then back to me. "It'll try again," he said. No explanation. No elaboration. Just certainty. He reached into his coat and pulled out cash. Set it on the counter. More than the coffee cost. I didn't correct him. Didn't adjust it. didn't question it. Because transactions here didn't seem to follow normal rules. He stood up slowly, took one last look around the station, then walked to the door. He paused with his hand on the handle. "3 things," he said without turning. I stayed still, listening. "Don't rush." A beat. "Don't improvise." Another. "And if something feels like it's giving you a choice," he stopped, then finished quietly, "it isn't." He opened the door and stepped out. I watched him go. His footprints stayed, didn't fade, didn't disappear. They remained in the snow, leading away from the station. That was new. I checked my watch. 2:26. Time was moving faster now. Or maybe I was. Either way, the shift was progressing, and I was still in it. At 2:41, the freezer handle moved again. Slow, deliberate. I didn't turn, didn't acknowledge, because I already knew. Whatever was in there wasn't meant to be seen. The radio clicked back on. No hiss, no static, just silence. Then a whisper, right next to my ear. "Open it." I didn't react, didn't flinch, didn't turn, because that wasn't where the radio was, and that wasn't part of the rules. The whisper came again, closer, more defined. "Are allowed." That was the problem. Allowed wasn't a rule. Allowed was a suggestion, and suggestions didn't exist here. Only consequences. I stepped back from the counter, put distance between myself and the sound, between myself and the freezer, because distance felt like control, even if it wasn't. The whisper stopped, instantly, like it had never been there. The radio resumed its low hum, neutral, uninvolved. I checked the paper again. All 12 rules, unchanged. Still the only structure that mattered. At 2:58, the lights dimmed slightly. Not flickering, not failing, just lowering, like something was preparing the room for the next phase. I looked at the clock. 3 o'clock was coming, and whatever happened between 1 o'clock and 3 o'clock was about to end, which meant something else was about to begin. I didn't know if that was better or worse, but I knew one thing for certain. The rules had gotten me this far, and whatever came next, they were still the only reason I was standing. At exactly 3 o'clock a.m., the pressure in the room changed. Not gradually, not subtly. It dropped all at once, like something unseen had stepped back and taken its weight with it. The building felt larger, quieter, not empty, but less occupied. I exhaled without meaning to. Rule 7 no longer applied. That mattered more than I expected. Not because I planned to go outside, but because something had just lifted. And when something lifts in a place like this, it usually means something else is about to take its place. The clock ticked forward. 3:01. Nothing happened. 3:02. Still nothing. That was new. For the first time since midnight, the absence of activity felt unnatural, like a pause that didn't belong. I stayed behind the counter, hands resting flat, eyes moving slowly across the room. Everything looked the same. Shelves aligned, coffee steaming, freezer sealed, door closed. Normal. Artificially normal. At 3:07, the radio turned off. No transition, no static, just silence. Complete. I looked at it. The display remained dark, the cord still unplugged, and yet, this time, it felt truly off, like whatever had been using it had stepped away. That should have been a relief. It wasn't, because the rules hadn't changed, and when the rules stay the same but the behavior shifts, it means the variables have. The front door opened, slow, controlled. No wind pushed in behind it. No cold rushed through. Just a clean, quiet motion. A man stepped inside, younger than the others, mid-20s, no coat, no gloves, no visible reaction to the cold. That was the first problem. The second, no footprints. Rule 5. Customers who leave no footprints must be served last. But there were no other customers, which meant last didn't apply in a normal way. He walked to the counter without looking around, without hesitation, without acknowledging anything in the room. Then he stopped and looked directly at me. Full eye contact. I dropped my gaze immediately. Rule 2. Do not make eye contact. Serve them quickly. I've been here before, he said. His voice was clear, perfectly normal. That made it worse. I need the same thing. I moved to the coffee machine, poured a cup, set it on the counter without looking up. What else? I asked. A beat. Then, you know what I'm here for. I didn't respond, because that wasn't part of the transaction. Time, he said. The same word as before, the same request, but this time, closer, more direct. I slid the coffee toward him. Anything else? I repeated. A longer pause, then a soft exhale, almost amused. You're learning, he said. I stayed still, hands steady, eyes down. The cup lifted. I heard it. Didn't see it. Didn't need to. Then, silence. I waited. 5 seconds. 10. When I finally looked up, he was gone. The coffee cup remained empty. I didn't touch it. I didn't clear it, because there was no rule telling me to. At 3:22, the pump activated again. Different this time. Louder. The numbers climbing faster. Aggressive. Impatient. I stayed where I was. Didn't look, didn't move. Because I already knew this was the last push. Not a test, not a pattern, a final attempt. The handle outside slammed once against the pump. Metal against metal. Sharp. Then again, like something was trying to force interaction. I pressed my hands harder into the counter, grounding, staying inside the rules, because the rules were the only thing holding this together. The noise stopped, abruptly. No fade, no transition, just gone. At 3:33, something shifted behind me. I didn't need to turn, I felt it. The freezer door, opening, slow, deliberate. The air changed, colder than before, heavier. And then, a sound. Not movement, not scraping, breathing. Low, measured, patient, waiting. Every instinct I had told me to turn around, to look, to confirm, to understand. But there was no rule telling me to, and that was the only thing that mattered. I stayed facing forward, eyes on the counter, hands steady, breathing controlled. The sound grew closer, not physically, but perceptually, was aligning with me, matching, synchronizing. Then, a whisper from behind me, right at ear level. You missed one. My chest tightened slightly. I ran through the rules, all 12, every line, every condition. I had followed them exactly. The whisper came again, softer. Turn around. I didn't move, because that wasn't a rule, and if it wasn't a rule, it wasn't safe. The breathing stopped, instantly. The air shifted again, lighter, less present. The freezer door closed, on its own, a soft click sealing it shut. I waited. 5 seconds. 10. Nothing followed. At 3:40, the lights stabilized fully. No flicker, no dimming, just steady illumination, the kind that hadn't existed since before midnight. I checked the clock. Time moved normally again. The pressure in the room had lifted. Not completely, but enough. At 5:58, the door opened one last time. The same man from the beginning stepped inside. Heavy coat, gloves, calm expression, like nothing had happened. He looked around the station once, took in the shelves, the counter, the untouched coffee cups. Then he nodded. You made it, he said. I didn't answer, didn't need to. He stepped behind the counter and picked up the paper, folded it once, then set it down again. You followed them, he added. Another nod. Approving, measured. I hesitated, then asked, "What happens if I didn't?" He looked at me for a long moment, then said, "You don't get to ask that after." That was enough. He reached for the phone behind the counter. Dialed. Waited. "Truck on 16. It'll start now." He hung up. Looked at me. "Shift's over." I took off the apron, set it on the counter, left the paper where it was, and walked to the door. The cold hit different this time. Cleaner, normal. My truck sat where I'd left it. I got in, turned the key. It started. No hesitation, no delay, like it had never failed. I pulled onto the road, drove, didn't look back, not once, because some places only exist if you acknowledge them, and I wasn't giving this one anything more than I already had. I don't take that route anymore. I don't drive at night in Alaska if I can avoid it, and I don't stop at gas stations that don't have names. But I keep a copy of those rules, folded, in my wallet. Not because I plan to go back, but because now I know places like that don't stay in one spot, and next time, I might not get a second shift to learn them.